Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining this third and final session in our Climate Storytelling Partnership series this week on reimagining the city for the 21st century. I'm Tara Stafford Okonse, an education specialist with the Center for Sustainable Development of the Earth Institute, Columbia University, and we are grateful to be co-organizing this series with the Consulate General of Denmark. To give you a bit of background, in our first two sessions in this series, we've heard from an inspiring group of speakers on how urban planners and decision makers can do more to listen to the people when making decisions to promote more sustainable cities. Everything from promoting more people-centered spaces, reducing dependency on cars, the role of the arts, and of course, our favorite issue, the ways education, both through schooling and within communities, can help accelerate sustainable solutions. So today we'll first hear from our experts who will share their thoughts on how education systems and communities can play a big role in influencing city planning and decision-making for sustainable development and social inclusion. And then we will hear from our amazing group of youth advocates to hear their ideas for how education can play a big role in promoting and facilitating change. So to give us some more context about this climate storytelling partnership, I'll turn it over to our Director of Education from the Center for Sustainable Development, Dr. Radhika Iyengar. Dr. Iyengar is Director of Education and Research, a research scholar at the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University's Earth Institute. And Radhika has been working in the areas of sustainable development and environmental education at our center since 2011. She collaborates with scientists, health experts, environmentalists, and others in areas, most recently looking at education on COVID-19, promoting well-being, environmental education, citizen water testing, early literacy, and other topics. She works in collaboration with various levels of government and NGOs in multiple countries, advising on designing environmental education programs. And we're very proud that she is a 2020 recipient of the Teachers College Distinguished Alumni Award this year. So Radhika, please share some.
Thank you, Tara. Just to highlight what we were, focusing on here is there is a climate story partnership, and I just wanted to give a background on how it came about. So, Earth Institute has a lot of speaker events, panel discussions, usually with a lot of UN bureaucrats, leaders, as well as scientists who come together to make policies, discuss policies. But I felt that there is a lack of that communication that needs to happen with us, people who make a difference at the ground level in our own communities, with our youth leaders and our leaders who are in community leaders. So luckily we have this really amazing partner with the Denmark embassy, UN consulate for Denmark in the United States, and we thought of collaborating with them, Earth Institute, with the Consulate General of Denmark, so that we can translate these high-level panels to people who can make a difference locally, which is all of us. So this is in third in the series. We have the cities and education high-level panel that was more about cities and what would we be focusing on in terms of city planning and urban planning with mayors and with architects and whatnot. And then the second group was academics who were focusing on how we can actually take some frameworks from that high level panel and make a difference with academia and with the academic world. And then the third component is us having these community conversations to make sure that all of those levels actually percolate to us and we drive the change forward so that we can inform the policies next time around. So it's like closing the loop. So that is the storytelling element, and we are the storytelling actors. So we will combine all of these information. We will combine all of these snippets that we are hearing from this into various avenues, including courses that we are designing. We will be sending it to the Consulate General of Denmark, as well as at the Earth Institute, to say that we are the change makers who are making all these changes. And there is also this policy element that needs to have that needs to reflect our ideas. So that was the whole storytelling part. So I thank everyone for joining today and being a part of this storytelling framework. I'll hand it over to Tara, who will moderate the discussion. Thanks, Tara.
Thank you, Radhika. So next we have Dr. Nidhi Thakur, Professor of Economics of Sustainability in Education, Health, Gender, and Business from Keene University in New Jersey. And Nidhi teaches Economics of Sustainability, where she is a member of the Open Educational Resources OER Task Force at Keene University. She's entrusted with creating a vision and actionable goals for increasing access to quality higher education. She is also a member of the university's Anti-Racism and Social Justice Initiative at the College of Liberal Arts. The focus of her work, both in academia and in her community, continues to be that of bridging the gap between science and practice, between rhetoric and action, and between left and right. To meet this goal, she actively participates in community engagements, consults with our team here at the Earth Institute. We're very lucky to have her in many of our sessions, focusing on women empowerment training, and writes perspective pieces and poetry as a commentary on contemporary affairs. She has a postdoc in health economics from the University of Chicago, and thank you for joining us today. Please.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Radhika, for having me here. And I see a very lovely audience in number, as well as the fact that, people are joining from, I see somebody joined in from UK. So this is very heartening to see so many people join in from so many different parts of the world. This is a great opportunity. Part because as Radhika put it, there is a storytelling, and that is absolutely important because leaving things to the ivory towers of academia or to the coveted halls of city halls where policies are made does not take us far. So we do need to have us, the real actors on the field, taking these steps as far as we can. And on that note, I wanted to share a presentation I created for this. This is going to be a little long, so we'll see where we can go with this. Can everybody see my screen? Yes? All right. Okay, so here we are. We are doing the community conversation about resilient cities, and then we'll talk about education. So quickly to give for those of us who were not able to join the other panels that Radhika and Tara mentioned happened 2 days ago or have been happening for the last 2 days. When we talk about resilience, what is it that we're asking? Resilient cities are cities that have the ability to absorb, recover, and prepare for future shocks. Shocks can come from the economic, environmental, social, and institutional. So think about a city like Detroit, or a city which is built around a mining employment. And when that ends, the city faces a downturn. So that's an economic downturn. Think about an environmental shock. So think about New Orleans, Louisiana. Hurricane Katrina comes and the city is completely taken aback. Think about all the other ways in which a city can encounter a shock and prepare for that. But when we say, are we resilient to a shock? My question is, should we wait for a shock? Or can we begin to focus on the preparedness and possibly avert the shock? And this comes, so because this is a storytelling session of sorts also, I just want to draw from a story which some of you might be familiar with, which is the island city of, and the name just suddenly evaded me. It's going to come back to me. What was the city which was built on a volcano? Does anybody remember that name? It just evaded me. I had written it down. But anyhow, so there was this city, the volcano was gradually erupting, and the city members refused to take note of that until one day the fish all showed up belly up. And by the time the fish all showed up belly up in the ponds, it was already too late. And the volcano erupted, and everybody so I'm talking about the city of Pompeii, the legendary city of Pompeii from the mythology, right? So my question is, should we all wait till our fish show up belly up? Or can we start to do something about this volcano, which is already beginning to erupt? And that is the volcano of climate change, that is the volcano of social inequity, and so on. And so, can we begin to prepare? And I think that is where we come in as actors. So let me ask you also, we might say, why are we talking about city being resilient? Does a city have the organizational structure, including statutory powers and the social capital to even begin to tackle these issues? And so for my young friends, I wanted to point to them in case they had forgotten the C40, the group of C40, which is essentially cities were on the front lines of pushing back against a very recent President Trump's decision on the June 1, 2017, with hundreds of mayors pledging to adopt. So we see cities becoming almost like city states, like nation states unto themselves, standing up to acknowledge and say we are going to do the right thing, which means it becomes very important for us as individual players to begin to believe that we have a voice. Because if we have a voice in the city hall and we know the city can stand up for itself, then we are no longer mute. We are no longer small players. We need to start playing an active role. That is certainly something to remember. So, where do we start? The first point would be cities need to accept that sustainability is a goal. That means the leadership becomes very critical. Leadership, not in terms of being authoritarian and saying to people, you will not be using plastic plates. No, that's not how these kind of changes take place, right? What we need is leadership to at least send a message that sustainability is in our radar. We are not completely devoid of understanding what it means to have eco-friendly products and so on and so forth, right? So we need a leadership to send the right message down. We need to define sustainability. That means contemporary and intergenerational sustainability. So we're talking about, so my children could come to me and say, does sustainability mean that we should stop eating today because there may not be food tomorrow for other people? No, we are not talking about curbing our growth and consumption to our inconveniences. We are telling, redefining our happiness, right? Redefining what is right for us such that it is intergenerationally available. Because as is well known, we don't own the earth, we only inherit it to pass it on to the others, right? To our next generations. So we need to understand that sustainability is important. And what better way to define what sustainability is than the UN's Sustainable Development Goals? I think these are a fabulous set of beacons by which we can all begin to align our various practices. Whenever in doubt, look up at one of these, look up at all of these 17 rather, and see, okay, am I doing anything which doesn't fit pretty much into any of these? If that is the case, then I need to reimagine, rethink, and redo, right? So I would say that. And then I would say, why do we need to keep harping on the message of sustainability? Because just recently, this is 2018, the United States has one of the highest percentage of climate deniers in the rich world, third only to Indonesia and Saudi Arabia. So while these numbers don't seem staggering, when we say around 15% of United States said they are climate deniers, does 85% completely believe? Well, they're on the margin, they're on the border. There's so much that needs to be done, and that is why us as storytellers again come into the frame. So then last, what is the toolkit that a city should have, and what is it that we as citizen warriors can bring into the picture? So a city's toolkit would be tool number one: create agencies dedicated to reading, researching, rehashing, redesigning, and hopefully rewriting regulations. And I write regulations here in all caps, at least in bold, if not all caps. I teach a sustainable global business course. And so I am talking to students who are going to be potential managers in companies. They are going to align their work ethic and interest to the bottom line of the company. So it is my goal to continue to tell them that while you do that, there is people, planet, and profit, right? So we need to tell them that indeed any company, no matter what, no matter who you are, be it an Apple farm or be it Apple, the phone maker, no one will do anything extra that's required. There is a regulation that makes them do it. So I think that the bottom line of bringing everything, bringing things, everything, bringing everything home is regulation. Regulations are very important, and therefore, is there a disturbance there?
Can you please mute your TV or a lot of noise? Thanks.
Okay. So I feel that regulations are very important. For example, the Melbourne's, the township that where I live, the single-use plastic ban is such an important event in the lives of so many of us here in the recent times, because I remember so many citizen, groups showed up at the township committee to voice their concerns, to express what they thought about this ban, that it really became a people's movement, and that was very important. Number two, when you think about the recent New Jersey's environmental justice legislation, now what does this mean? So our students need to be constantly in conversation about these recent developments, because these are going to have far greater ramifications for their lives and for the lives of people around them. Number two is communication. As a city, we need to create a communication toolkit, which means we've seen that virtual meetings have become very, very interesting. They have become ways of reaching out to far greater audience. So that's one thing which we might want to take from this pandemic era and continue to have this going even further. There will be role of various communication channels, including social media, to mobilize and organize. And then number three, active involvement of the city in organizing events around these issues. Because again, it is very easy for all of us as individual players to completely lapse into the comfort of our lives and forget that these are issues which are continuously playing upon our earth, upon our systems here. So that would be important. So the main theme of this conversation then is, how can education play a role? So let's go to that. Why education sector? Because, so I'm going to just skim through these because this comes from my talk at another some such session that we had for the SDG 4.7. So basically, I would think power of 10 framework is very important, which is that it allows you touch 10 people's lives with the right message, and that's going to amplify 10 times over and over. And that's how we create a change. What has been seen is that most curriculums barely mention the word climate change. So what can be done? Well, what the New Jersey governor has recently introduced, that climate change will become an integral part of the curriculums. That I think is an important step in the right direction. Why education sector? Because students spend a big chunk of their day in schools. Messages that emanate from schools legitimize theories and model the behavior. So we require that. Now, amongst the sustainable development goals, there are such beautiful ones. The one that really stands out to me is the SDG 4.7, which is that the 15-year-olds have to exhibit basic proficiency in environmental sciences and geosciences. The point being that here we are taking our 15-year-olds as almost mini adults. They're about to enter the world of adulthood. And we are hoping that they have a basic proficiency, at least. They know what does it mean when we say climate change versus climate breakdown. What is the difference? Are we really in peril? What kind of temperature rises will lead to seawater rising for New York City, for instance, right? And so on. So if that kind of basic understanding becomes common knowledge for our 15-year-olds, I can completely imagine that we will have so many more people making more thoughtful choices going forward, right? And so environmental sciences and geosciences through youth engagements. But really, is that all that is required? We require them to understand the economic impacts. I am an economist, so I think the economy of sustainability, the economics of sustainability really needs to be understood. That, this 99 cents, product, is it really 99 cents? And so we need to understand the entire cycle, and we need to be able to explain that to our students. That, I think, would be one of the most important focuses. And when I again brought this up is because, so for instance, in my class, when I'm teaching a class, I ask my students, as a manager, which SDG would you align with? And obviously, as producers, they think SDG 12 is something that directly aligns with them, responsible consumption and production. But then I tell them, what about your workforce? And then they go to SDG 8. And so they pick up a handful. And then it is my duty to tell them how all the other SDGs actually link to their ones. And that really opens their eyes to understand that how connected we are. And that's important. Likewise, the future of the labor market needs to be taught. We can't continue to teach our students the same curriculum, preparing them for the same jobs, when we know that increasingly there will be a need for simple things like solar panels. So we need to understand what is the science, what is the job market for these, and need to start preparing our students for some things like that. The impact of the purchasing power on the direction and production of business, and so on, right? So what are the entry point roadblocks? Again, this gets a little technical. There is a framing. Education for sustainable development does not need to be complementary. It has to be a part of and not complementary to traditional goals of education. Thus, the student learning outcomes need to be revised, not rewritten for EST. This is important because when I was talking to my 7th grader, and I was asking her, what do you think, where does sustainability fit in your curriculum? She says, we don't have room for one more subject because that might mean we'll have to stay back till 4 o'clock. And that's exactly what students are going to say. We don't want them to feel that this is something extra that they have to do. The need of all our, of my role as a successful teacher would be if I could make sustainability completely complementary to where they are right now, as opposed to becoming one extra step for them, right? And so a radical vision of education is missing, which requires that instead of maximizing along a social reproduction function, we are trying to create a more experiential method of learning. And so when I looked at the New Jersey initiative for climate change in curriculum, I was very happy to see that they imagine it to be incorporated in almost fantastic ways. We're talking about 21st century life and careers. We're talking about world languages. We're talking about technology and social studies. Even simple things like, so for instance, in my courses, if sustainability for me is also about gender equality, the first thing I do in my classes is that I realize that almost all the examples are written in he. The producer is a he. He does this, he does that. I try to make my examples very, very gender neutral. So I will create a he producer, a male producer, a female producer, and they are absolutely interchangeable. So that means the role of production of products is not now dedicated to males. And that kind of creates a scenario where males and females have a equal role in the economy. That is like a simple step which we need to take, but we need to become conscious going forward all the time. And so we're talking about social science, technology, all of these could have many elements of uh, uh, climate change and sustainability. Educational, this again is, I think, very important, that educational institutions need to start with modeling a behavior. For example, the teaching modes have to be eco-conscious. That means environmentally conscious, from waste management to electrification choices. And I know Radhika in her green team with the schools is working on something like this, right? And those are fantastic ways to incorporate in our daily lives, that even our teaching mode. So teaching, for instance, in our elementary schools, every year requiring kids to buy an entirely new set of plastic folders is not sending the message to the students that plastic production and consumption of this kind is a waste. It is not. They think it's okay to just click a button and buy as many plastic products as possible. And so when the school doesn't send a message, it doesn't go very far. So that's where the school can come in handy. Very importantly, current models have continued to think that human beings are distinct from non-human life, planetary context, and climate attention, while the stark interrelationships are explicitly playing out in this current crisis also. Most importantly, is education for sustainable development or education of sustainable development. And those are interesting because, again, we don't want to make it a subject which we need to read about and forget. We need to make it something that becomes part of us. So, what is the scope of this education? Can it challenge some more deep seated status quos whose unseating can have higher impacts? Like, can we teach our students that, can it emphasize on eating plant based diets? That is a very touchy topic. Some people are by design meat eaters. You will learn to sell the concept to them, right? And how do you do that? Or living a car-free life, or refusing to attend events which use single-use plastics on a large scale, or question the refusal of a township to fly a Black Lives Matter flag. All these are issues of active citizenry, which our students can be taught to at least question. Children as receivers of education as opposed to creators of knowledge. Narrow focus on climate science leaves little room for incorporating issues like gender inequity and social justice. So we need to talk about it. Teachers can be, teachers need to become change agents. I personally, as a teacher, take it as a very important role that, when I enter the student premises, everything I do, I know is reflecting on the kind of behavior that we model. So that's important. Would a district-wide emphasis on climate change percolate better to teachers? Yes, indeed. Top-down is important to some extent. So what can be done if we're talking about in the context of small townships and, education sector? Knowledge gaps need to be filled at scale. Most importantly, I feel, be it school students, be it college students, be it, active adults of the community, or be it faculty in colleges, we all need to get a complete course on follow the trash. Because what we have done till now is lived a very linear cycle, right? We have lived a cycle where we extract from the earth, we modulate it, change it to our convenience, and then we completely trash it and let it become mountain of landfill, right? So we are literally doing a linear scenario, and we need to understand that cannot survive, that cannot be sustainable. So how do we do that consciously? We need to start following our trash and see, where does it go? What does it end up being? And we will realize that it comes back as toxins in our water, in our soils, in our food. And that's the only way, when we internalize that journey, that we can become more conscious, sustainable citizens. And so that needs to start, I think, at school levels too. Civic engagement of students is so important because regulations, again, are so important. The only way, for that matter, for a free market economy to be reined in, to do something which is different than the usual profit maximization. And then, of course, there needs to be more experiential learning. How are our carbon footprints created? Something as simple as asking a student to nurture a plant per semester, or maintaining a personal log of a food wastage. That can't be too much to ask. That's something we can totally ask. And last but not the least, we have to sell to our students as teachers that sustainability is not a geek nerd or a monk issue. It doesn't mean you have to sit in a jungle to be a sustainability person. Sustainability is super cool. Go on Nike.com and you will realize what fantastic, beautiful, funky, fashionable shoes they're making, all with the primary goal of reducing waste on Earth. So, sustainability, I think, is a very important concept in our complete education journey. The end.
Thank you so much. That was such a rich discussion and presentation from you on, I especially love your points about the C40 and that reminder that, you know, even if at a country level, we're not taking the right actions, when you count up all those cities and the influence we can have locally, it's so important. And all the ideas you've mentioned about schooling, and I think we'll hear a lot more examples of what you've talked about from our student panelists a little bit later in the session. So I think next on our, share my screen again. Next we have Sanjeev Nayak. He's an incoming councilman from the Milburn Township Committee of New Jersey. And Sanjeev is a proud Milburn resident who, although his wife.
The voice is cutting. I think there's a lot of noise. Maybe, I don't know if you can, there's something rubbing it, maybe your paper or something.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, Sanjeev, he feels fortunate to have the opportunity to represent the best interest of Milburn Township as a councilman of the committee. And as a committee member, Sanjeev's priorities lie in a safer and more secure township for the residents and the recognition that the solution for most issues currently faced, be it traffic or the safety of the children, lies intertwined in the need to better respect and leverage what nature and the environment has to offer us. He strongly believes that all forward-looking efforts need to work together towards a greener tomorrow, assured by better educated and aware residents, both adults and children, and an optimum balance between environmental sustainability and economic growth for the township. Professionally, having spent the majority of his career consulting for operational and financial success within the CPG industry, Sanjeev has co-founded and currently partners in a private equity fund garnered within the same industry. With expertise in managing businesses for financial success, an undergraduate degree from Southern New Hampshire University and a master's from Pace University, he brings to the committee operational experience and critical financial thinking during these unprecedented times. Sanjeev consistently determines his position on issues based on facts, analysis, and critical thinking, and prioritizes execution as he does strategizing. So thank you for being with us, and please go ahead.
I didn't realize you're going to read the whole thing through. I sent it to Radhika to just clip whatever she needs to talk on about me on those. But thank you so much, Tara. Thank you, Radhika and Nidhi. That was great. Thank you for the opportunity. You guys here does a tremendous job. I actually, in my whole life, I take things very logical and right from the down below. There was in my campaign time, the green team, and I give that example now everywhere. Campaign is not easy to go through. It's the most draining time period that anyone can go through. And then suddenly the green team comes in, or environmental team comes in and wants to do a meet and greet with me. I was like, whoa, what am I going to talk to them about? So, and you know, when you say environmental team, they're daunting. They can question you, they can grill you and anything. But you know, when I had that meeting with them, by that time I was so down, I was so drained out. Wherever I went for meet and greet before that, it was all about what can you do for us? What can you do for me? Can you do this? Can you do that? It was all geared towards those own individual that was questioning me. When the green team came on, or environmental team came on, they were talking about as a whole, what can we do for the township? As a whole, what can we do for the people where we throw our compost and goes as a landfill? And that's where the light bulb went off. I was like, this is what I am standing for in the township. I am not here to volunteer my time to individually please people. I am here to make a difference, to do something for the township that in my mind, people have not been able to do it. Or just to add thankfully, I have time now to help the township. So Green Team was a very, very big inspiration to me in my campaign. When I was totally drained out, they re-energized me. So it's kudos to them. They work for others. And just after that meet and greet, I realized, or there's always a moment of thinking again, or you rethink what you're doing. Every animal also does things for themselves to eat for itself and its family. We are human beings. We are at least level ahead from animals. So at least in this species, we should be thinking about others and doing things which is good for the mankind, not just for what is good for me. Uh, I grew up in a developing country, India, where I was fortunate or unfortunate to face everything. Where if I use more water, I know I won't get water, or other people in the township won't get water. So we would turn our water tap faucet off as soon as we are done brushing our teeth or done showering, take a small shower. So it was more disciplined. I went to an army school, more disciplined about the time, about if you're leaving the room, you turn it off, you turn the lights off. These are small, small things, make a big difference just in your own self. Now, we have heard from Nidhi that it could be top down or it could be bottom up. It is both ways. So you have to start anything that you want to see a change outside. You have to start somewhere. And when it gets to say 15 to 20%, and since I'm from financial industry, I believe in graphs a lot. So when you see a graph, it will go slowly up. But when it hits about 20%, then the graph takes on and it goes really high in no time. So it's a snowball effect. You put a lot of effort to make a change, but when you think you're tired, then suddenly other people start working on those things that you started and you won't even realize. And it will give you a snowball effect of really what is happening, what you will see in 20 years you haven't seen, but 21st year you will see exactly what you wanted to see in 80 years, but it's happening now. So small things, do it for others. So in my presentation, I have broken my presentation down, and I have not sent any presentation, but when I talk, I want to talk it in 3 different segments. One is the introduction, one will be the education institutes, how they play the role, and then the third is the government institute, how they play the role. So that is, if you may, that is what I would actually talk in those pieces, just to kind of simplify it. And if you don't get clarity, then don't ask me a question. I may not even know, but shoot the question at the end. I'll be happy to answer wherever or however I can. So there is no denying our environment is under attack. There's also no denying that we are to blame for it. But the key here is to learn from our mistakes and do what we can do to stabilize our path forward so our next generation have a viable planet to live on. And when I say next generation, believe me, the younger generation, and most of them are here as well, they're very mindful than what my generation or the previous generation were. Even though we say we had a simple life, but based on that simple life, we have actually we made a monstrous mistake in dealing with the environment. So we are going back to our roots, making sure that while we can enjoy what we have in the world today, we are not destroying them for our successors and our next generation not to enjoy it as much as we did. So my thought on this as a committee man and also as a person is threefold. Awareness is the key. Number one high up is awareness. We need to become and make others more aware of the repercussion of the choices we make every day. The more the people are aware, the more conscious they will get. And they're simple things: how you travel to work, how you pack your food, how long a shower you should take, awareness is what will allow us to begin to make environment-friendly choices. And then second is think holistic. So we need to consider the environment and its sustainability in every decision we make. So from new development to traffic patterns to garbage disposal, we do not have the luxury to be sustainable in only in one part of our decision making and not on the other part, even though that is helping, but it will not help completely. And most of all, the third thing, I believe we need to start them young. If we can teach our next generation to be sustainable in their ways, to make it a way of life for them, we have won the war. Right now, we are dealing with the battles. So without that, we are fighting the little battles, some of which we win and some we lose. So, so I mean, I think we talk about engineering, we talk about doctors, and in our schools we have maths, we have physics, we have chemistry, we have biology. So all these things that you've learned in school, you get to into a higher education, and it is like a follow through, and it's easier to get into. And majority of the people go and do those higher education, but there are a few people or good mindset people that gets into environment, but they have not studied that when they were in school. So it's not a natural path. So if we can get that done from school time, it'll be a fairly natural thing to get into as a higher education. So the more clarity, more awareness will be there. And this will be one of those lines. It could be like MBAs, it could be like MDs, you know. So now that was the introduction piece. Now, what does educational institution play roles or in this? So I would say educational institutions hold the power to win the war on sustainability. It is a duty to change our current patterns, but more critical is to change the way the next generation perceives sustainability. While the environment at home is definitely impactful, true learning for the next generation comes through educational institution. As Nidhi just mentioned, you spend a lot of, or kids spend a lot of time in schools, more time than even talking to parents. Even though they're virtual today, they spend about 6 to 8 hours in front of computers, just sitting with their friends and in the classes. So they spend a lot of time there and get very influenced by them. If we can incorporate environmental studies as a part of our curriculum or as a part of non-curricular teaching in schools, be it through clubs or assemblies or encouragement to meet environmental goals, our children will grow with environmental sensitivity in their personality. So not only will they will be better citizens, we need to realize that they will go home and teach their families, us, the same as well. So just like we hear from our kids on technology usage, on social media use, or racial sensitivity, we will hear from them on environmental sensitivity, and that will be our win. Once we create these priorities on higher level, local township needs like making sure you recycle, making sure you do not offer or allow non-biodegradable materials in school, encouraging kids to bike to school. And these are simple things, but it changes the thought process, it changes the mindset, and such will come very naturally to those schools. Overall, it is the key that our educational institution acknowledge the need for incorporating good environment practices within our children and our town. And so this was the educational institution role. And what should be the government institution? And very quickly, I'm still in the transition mode to get onto the township committee. So we are working on taking over, setting up goals for next year. And some people, or it is as much as you want to do about the township or want to do about your role into the township. And this could be as little as you want to do. So I'm more of a goal-oriented person, and I work with what are my yearly goals, what are my monthly targets based on yearly goals, and what are my weekly tasks to finish those things, even get down to a daily or hourly. So while doing this 2021 goals, believe it or not, I am actually making sure at least from my side, there are 5 TC members, including the mayor. At least from my end, I am considering or making sure wherever decision I'm making, there is some part of environment in it. We have an environmental committee. We have a pedestrian safety board that is also kind of more towards a green team. So I'm also trying to push what their goals are. Sometimes they don't talk about their goals because it may be too expensive or drastic changes, but we have to set some goals to at least go in that direction. It could be we'll achieve 10% of that goal for next year. That's fine. So I believe the key here is the awareness, even for the township. It is critical to build awareness for the people within the township. The regular workshops on sustainability practices would be a great step. Better signage on littering, waste would help. Consistent email and messaging to encourage practices like recycle, water conservation would be good. We in the developed world, we feel, oh, tap should be on all the time while I'm shaving. No, or we could shower for 30 minutes when it could be a 5-minute or a 7-minute. I'm not saying don't shower, but shower, everything that we use, don't take it for granted. There are a lot of people that are without that. And I don't think even creating stricter policies and fines is a bad thing either. Even in companies, when we do not give to customer the right thing, they penalize us, maybe a little. And we as company or customer, when our supplier don't reach up to expectation, we penalize a little bit to them just to make sure they don't repeat the mistake again. It's not drastic, but it's something there for them to be mindful next time. And I think same thing could be done towards the township residents too. And I am a resident myself, so it will be for me as well. I'm in the same boat. Sometimes you need more than just a little push. So fines for littering or incorrect recycling can also be a consideration. But when I say this, I say this with my heart and with my soul and with my brain as well. Set goals and add sustainability across all those goals, whether it's a building you're making, construction rules you're putting in, zoning. Just make sure that if there is a plastic remove ban or plastic ban thing comes up, it shouldn't be a shock to these people. It is, yes, that is a given. Why were we not getting away from plastic in the first place? That should be the mindset. And the more you talk to these people, the more you talk to the resident, including me, it is just easier to make those changes. So I think it shouldn't come as a surprise to those people. So the more awareness we create, and it needs to get created. Like I was in school, I used to learn Microsoft because Microsoft added their software into a school and given those schools free in our library. So I grew up using Microsoft Word, Excel, and I'm very good at it. As soon as I got in office, I did not use Apple. I started using Microsoft. But now our kids, forget Apple, they are gone into Google Sheets. Now for them, Google Sheets is Google Sheets. I am sure they'll continue to use as soon as they come in working force. So the more you can put it down, and it could be like, again, I would refer it to Nidhi's previous presentation. You don't need to add that as a separate subject and increase the number of hours in the day. It could be a curriculum or it could be a non-curriculum too. Or I would say as a social studies or as a science, we remember everything that we learned then. If we have something of those sort for environment or for sustainability, I think it'll be an easier achieving target when people grow up. It'll be in their nature. So thank you for your time. And I hope I lived a little bit up to your expectation. And I hope everyone thinks to do stuff for others and try to make this place a better place. There is always a room, and that room is for improvement in everything.